We are often told that our value is a fixed thing, like the height of a mountain or the color of our eyes. We are told that if the people who are supposed to love us the most see us as small, then we must be small. We let their words become our walls. We let their low expectations become our ceiling. But there is a secret about being broken that the great people of the world don't understand. When you are shattered into 1,000 pieces, you get to choose how to put yourself back together. You don't have to go back to the faded version of yourself. You can forge a life so bright, so radiant, that it washes out the memory of everyone who tried to dim your spirit. This is a story about capacity. It is about the moment you realize your world can be as big and as vibrant as you dare to imagine. Look at the skyline at dawn. The oranges, the pinks, the yellows, they don't ask for permission to shine. Neither should you. The betrayal didn't arrive with a shout. It arrived with a shift in the light. Mark and I had been married for 6 years, and for 5 of them, we were an open book. We shared a charging station in the kitchen where our phones sat side by side every night. But then, the side by side stopped. He started taking his phone into the bathroom. He started leaving it face down on the nightstand. When I asked him about it, he laughed, a short, nervous sound that didn't reach his eyes. "Company security, Sarah," he had said. "We're handling high-level accounts now. I can't have anyone seeing the data." I was the anyone. Then came the late nights. I remember seeing them at that upscale rooftop bar. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was dropping off his gym bag because he forgot it. The sun was a heavy, liquid gold, sinking behind the skyscrapers. The champagne in Eleanor's glass was a sparkling, translucent pink, bubbling with a wealth I didn't understand. Eleanor's laugh was a loud, polished sound that echoed off the glass railings. She leaned into Mark, her silk dress catching the amber light. Mark was smiling, that shallow, practiced smile, the one he used for clients he didn't like but needed to impress. He was wearing a silk paisley shirt that cost more than our first 3 months of mortgage payments. I stood in the shadows, watching them. They looked like a high-saturation magazine ad, but to me, the colors felt artificial. Mark caught my eye for a split second, and the gold in his gaze turned to lead. He didn't come over. He didn't wave. He just looked through me as if I were a smudge on the glass. I realized then that I was a budget version of the life he wanted. I was still trying to be the good wife, not realizing I was being edited out of my own life to make room for someone glossier. The end happened on a Tuesday. I had spent years making our kitchen a sanctuary. I painted the walls a sunny, vibrant yellow that made even the rainiest day feel like June. I had white cabinets, clean lines, and a window filled with clay pots of basil and mint. I was holding a bouquet of ranunculus blooms so orange and pink they looked like they had been dipped in neon paint. I was humming, thinking we could still fix the cracks. Then Mark stood by the door. He had a designer suitcase at his feet, its black leather looking like a void in my bright room. "I'm moving out tonight, Sarah," he said. His voice was cold, cutting through the warm afternoon sunlight. "Is it Eleanor?" I asked. My voice was a whisper, but it felt like a scream in the quiet kitchen. "She has a vision for the future that you don't have the capacity for. You're content with being small. You're the yellow walls, Sarah. Eleanor is the gold skyline. I need greatness." The knife I was using to trim the flowers hit the butcher block with a dull thud. He looked at our modest kitchen, the one I had painted myself, with a look of pure disdain. When the door clicked shut, the house didn't feel empty. For the first time, with the sun streaming across the floor, highlighting every speck of dust and every bright corner, it felt open. It felt like a blank canvas. Mark expected me to fade into a gray shadow of regret. Instead, I found a job at a retro diner downtown. It was a riot of color: turquoise walls, cherry red vinyl booths, and chrome napkin dispensers that gleamed so brightly in the 7 a.m. sun, they looked like mirrors. I wore a red and white checkered uniform and carried trays of blueberry pancakes, topped with melting butter and vibrant orange juice. I was tired, but I was surrounded by life. One morning, the bell above the door chimed. Mark and Eleanor walked in. They looked out of place in their muted grays against my turquoise world. Eleanor saw me, and her lips curled into that pitying smile. She reached into her designer bag and pulled out a crisp $20 bill. She dropped it onto the table, right into a sticky puddle of spilled strawberry syrup. "Keep the change, Sarah," she whispered. "It looks like you need it more than we do." They left, their laughter trailing behind them. I picked up that $20 bill. It was wet and sticky, smelling of sugar and condescension. But as I wiped it clean, I didn't feel poor. I felt energized. I saw that $20 for exactly what it was, a brick. I was going to take every pity tip and build a wall they could never climb over. Therefore, I walked back to the kitchen, a tray of coffee in my hand and a fire in my chest. My new apartment was a far cry from the yellow kitchen, but I refused to let it be dark. I painted the walls a warm, pale blue. I strung whimsical fairy lights across the ceiling and bought a lava lamp that cast pulsing shadows of purple and green across the floor. My desk was a masterpiece of organized chaos. I had painted it a bright teal, and it was covered in neon-colored notebooks and a laptop plastered with stickers. This was the midnight code era. I spent my nights wrapped in a fuzzy orange blanket, the blue light of the screen reflecting off my glasses. I was learning a new language. While Mark was attending gray corporate galas, I was building the Capacity Project. The work was brutal. I would spend 6 hours trying to find a single missing semicolon in my code. I would cry from exhaustion at 3 a.m., the lavender scent of my candles the only thing keeping me grounded. But then, a line of code would work. A graph would populate with vibrant green bars. I realized that Mark's greatness was just a facade. He moved money around. I was building a world. Every line of code was a stroke of paint on a canvas they couldn't see. My capacity wasn't just growing. It was exploding in a kaleidoscope of logic and grit. 3 years later, I was standing in a minimalist, light-filled penthouse office. The walls were decorated with large, vibrant abstract paintings. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling glass, looking at a tablet. My suit was a striking emerald green, a color that represented growth and life. The sun hit the Crystal Tech Innovator of the Year awards on my desk, sending rainbow reflections dancing across the room. I had watched Apex Logistics, Mark's company, from afar. They were struggling. They were a gray, bloated machine. Mark was still a senior VP, but he was a captain on a sinking ship. When their stock hit an all-time low, I called my board. "It's time," I said. "We aren't just buying their contracts. We're buying the whole building." I looked at my reflection in the glass. I didn't see a good woman or a small woman. I saw an emerald-clad titan. The boardroom at Apex was now a deep, sophisticated navy, a backdrop that made the neon-bright graphic displays on the walls pop with data. I sat at the head of the gleaming, polished mahogany table. The door opened, and the former board filed in. Mark and Eleanor were among them. In this high-energy, high-color room, they looked like ghosts. Mark saw me, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw him truly look at me. The shock was so profound he actually stumbled. Eleanor dropped her gold-plated pen. "I've restructured the company," I said, my voice as bright and steady as the lights above us. "We're cutting the fluff. Mark, you're being reassigned to the loading docks. You said you wanted to be big in logistics. It's time you learned how it works from the people you used to step over. And Eleanor, your marketing department now reports to me." I watched the color drain from their faces. I didn't need to yell. My presence in that room was the only payoff I needed. I had grown so large that there was no room left for their shadows. The lesson Sarah learned wasn't about the emerald suit or the penthouse view. It was about the fact that humiliation is often just fuel in disguise. When someone tries to make you feel small, they are usually trying to hide their own fear of how big you could actually become. I stood on my balcony at high noon, the sun blazing and the city baked in brilliant, colorful light. I took a breath of clear air and felt perfectly, wonderfully peaceful. The cityscape below was a patchwork of millions of stories, and mine was finally being told in full color. If you are currently sitting on your own kitchen floor, wondering how you will ever get up, remember this: the world isn't gray. It's waiting for your color. Don't waste your energy on revenge. Waste it on your own growth. Because the best way to prove someone wrong isn't to tell them, it's to make them live in a world that you now own.